Hello YouTubers, my name is Frederick Lopez and you are on a new episode of Hidden Gems. Last time I went over the film The Heavenly Kid, which you can check in the link below. Today I'm going to be going over the 1985 film My Science Project. Here is a brief cast and crew list as well as a plot synopsis. Here we go. My Science Project stars John Stockwell as Michael Harlan, Danielle von Zernick as Ellie Sawyer, Fisher Stevens as Vince Latello, Raphael Savage as Sherman, Richard Masur as Detective Isidore Nolte, Barry Corbin as Lou Harlan, Anne Redgeworth as Dolores, Candace Silvers as Irene, and Dennis Hopper as Bob Roberts. It is directed by Jonathan R. BETUEL. Mike and Ellie break into a military junkyard to find a science project for Michael's class, and discover a strange glowing orb which absorbs electricity. When the orb begins to blend past, present, and future, it is up to Michael and Ellie to stop the orb and save mankind. So yeah, that's pretty much what My Science Project is about. Now, I came across this film late 90s. My brother had like a Polaroid VHS where he recorded the film. Back when you used to record movies. Before DVRs, you used to record movies you see on TV on VHS. And he had the film My Science Project, and I watched that film. It's surprisingly one of the lesser-known 80s films. Is it the best movie ever? No. Like many of the 80s films, it's almost like a guilty pleasure. It's very cheesy. It has a little bit too much ambition for the budget it has. There's so many remakes now that I wonder what a movie like this, with a story, what it would be with CGI and just a big budget. But ultimately, it has a certain type of charm that films like Real Genius, War Games, Bill and Ted have from the 1980s. It's a very original story, and it has somewhat of a good cast. They all give, I guess, okay performances. They're pretty much like the 80s. They're pretty much like regular 80s teenagers. You have a very young, very early role of Fisher Stevens. You may see him in another 80s film, The Flamingo Kid. He's also the villain in the 1995 film Hackers. So there's a lot of interesting stuff there. And Dennis Hopper makes an appearance as the teacher. He has a very funny role. He's really out there. He has the same energy he did in the film Speed. And it's cool. They pay homage to Easy Rider in a certain part of the film. But ultimately, yeah, it's your basic plot, a lot like Real Genius with like government facilities being broken into. But yeah, he needs to have a science project to break into a military junkyard and find pretty much what is nowadays called a plasma ball. It emits electricity, bends space and time, and they go through the past, present, and future in a way, and everything is just blended. Very original, and the way they travel through time is also very original. It's not done in a Bill and Ted way with a phone booth. It's not like Back to the Future with the DeLorean. It's almost like there's schools here and everything's just kind of coming in and out of it, almost like Jumanji or Night at the Museum you would see in films later. And that's very interesting, and I also like the future where they have like laser weapons and stuff. I love the little nods to pop culture about like going full Jedi and having stormtrooper helmets. Just very all around, it's an 80s movie, 80s nerds, 80s teenagers. It has that same type of magic and feeling that a lot of the other 80s films have. But this one I feel like is very overlooked. Again, it's not the best movie ever. It's kind of corny, kind of cheesy at times. Not the best characters to really root for, but they're just average people, and I like the story. It's original enough to where I think it's worth one viewing. So if I had to give My Science Project a score, I would probably give it a 3 out of 5 and a B. It's not the worst movie ever, and it's not the best, but it's just in the middle and has a certain type of uniqueness to it that I think is missing from a lot of other films. The characters and dialogue is not to really say it's the best, but it does feel very 80s. They are average teenagers, and each character is unique. They have certain characteristics and charisma about them. That you could watch a whole 90-minute movie about them. The plot line, again, is really ambitious and very original, but it might be a little bit too ambitious for its own good. The film hasn't really aged as well, but it has that 80s feel to it. So if you've liked War Games, Real Genius, Bill and Ted, Back to the Future, go ahead and check out My Science Project. It's worth one viewing. Some of you may like it more than others, but I think it is a hidden gem of the 80s. It's not really mentioned very much. It's released on Blu-ray, but it's kind of bare bones, so you haven't really had like a shout factory release of the film. So you may be able to find it on Amazon, and it is for free on YouTube and some sites. So yeah, if you haven't checked out My Science Project, go ahead and check it out. And yeah, My Science Project is very underrated again, but it was one of the first movies released by Disney under the Touchstone Pictures logo, and it was actually done after Mike Eisner took over, but it was done by Ron Miller. So that's kind of interesting. One of the very early Touchstone Picture films. Of course, they later on do The Program, Tombstone, and many other 80s, 90s films that you may know. So yeah, My Science Project, I give a 3 out of 5 and a B. It's not the best 80s movie, it's not the worst, but I do think it is an underrated one and an overlooked film. Out of all the video library we have from the 1980s, not many people mention My Science Project. And it just has enough of that just kind of like cheesiness and corniness that it's just like, in a way, it's not the worst thing ever, but in a way, some of that is like kind of so bad it's good. In like a very innocent way, and I really like it. I wouldn't even call it a guilty pleasure. It's just one of those enjoyable movies where you don't really have to think too much. It has a simple plot. If you need to watch something for 90 minutes, check it out, put it in. You need to get your 80s fix, something that's a bit different than the other movies, then My Science Project will be your treat. Anyway, that's it for this episode of Hidden Gems. Tune in next week, in which I will go over the film Sidekicks. Till next time. I gotta get me a plasma ball, see if I can travel through time.